Ashley with Accomplished Quilting, and I'm coming to you live today to go over a quick tip for custom quilting with robotics. So this should work for Navigator and AutoPilot, although the function I'm going to use to place the pattern is only in AutoPilot. So I'll differentiate the two as I go through it, but just a quick tip to check placement of patterns. So I have a quilt loaded on the frame here, and I've chosen a pattern that I want to place in specific spots along the quilt. So I have these little squares, they're about 2-inch squares, and I've chosen a pattern and purchased a pattern that I'm going to place into these squares. And part of what makes custom quilting nerve-wracking is making sure the patterns are placed well. So I'm going to show you a little way to check your pattern placement and hopefully make things a little bit easier for you. So this is the pattern I've chosen, and because I'm an AutoPilot Mach 3, I'm going to be using a function called AutoFit. So AutoFit is a function that's only available in AutoPilot Mach 3, but you can place patterns with push pins in Navigator. So the part that I'm going to show that makes things easier is available in both Navigator and AutoPilot. Starting with AutoFit, we're going to click on the pattern and choose Begin AutoFit, and it disappears. It disappears because I have sew head selected. I'm sorry.
Could you go back?
Go back.
Do that again.
Okay, cancel.
Sweet.
All right, so this is my pattern, and I'm using AutoFit because AutoFit is a function that only works when your start and stop are on the same plane. So this is an AutoFit pattern. If you click a pattern that doesn't work, it will say this is not an AutoFit pattern. So here I am with my pattern, clicking AutoFit. Again, this is a function that's only in Mach 3. I'm going to select sew head, maintain ratio, and begin AutoFit. So I'm going to come over to my quilt, and with Mach 3, I can place my markings on the quilt using the green button when the AutoFit tool is open. So just a quick thing to remember, the green button is for functions and the white button is for push pins. Those can be swapped, but basically your right green is functions, whatever tool you're in. Boundary, AutoFit is going to be with your green button, and your white button remains your push pins. So I'm going to select my first point, which is on the edge of my little 2-inch block where I want to place my pattern. And then I'm going to go over where I would want that pattern to end and press the green button again. You'll notice on the screen my pattern popped up, and it's a little wonky. My block is a little wonky, so it's working as it should. I'm going to go to the next spot and press the green button again. So this is a point-to-point AutoFit pattern, and I'm running it along point-to-point on my blocks. Across my screen, my patterns are placed, and I would think they look pretty good. A little wonky, but again, my piecing is a little wonky. Whoop, are we here?
Yep.
Goodness, we're gonna have to do this over.
No, they're fine.
All right, hopefully we still have everyone there. So I have my patterns placed, and the purpose of this video was to show you how to double check these. So I'm gonna stop at this point, even though I might wanna go across the whole quilt with these patterns, and I'm gonna hit accept. Now that I've hit accept, I can move my sew head, and under view, you wanna select needle view. So if I uncheck this, this is what your view would normally look like by default. But when checking custom quilting placement, it's helpful to select needle view. So there's a check mark next to it. And then zoom in. And when you zoom in, notice no matter where I put the mouse, it's zooming in on the crosshairs. So I'm going to zoom in on the crosshairs and make it pretty big. And now I can turn the computer towards me. You back up. So I can turn the computer towards the quilt, and now I can go to the quilt itself and check my points. So I used AutoFit to place the pattern, and now I'm going to run the machine to each edge where I want to make sure that my pattern isn't going to stitch over. So because this is on needle view, I can move the machine to the edge of that fabric, and then I can run the needle along the edge and make sure that none of my pattern is coming close to that seam that I don't want it to cross over. So the tip for this video is to use needle view to your advantage, since your screen doesn't move with you, and your screen will follow the sew head across the quilt so that you can check your seams. This function of needle view is available in Navigator. So if you were placing patterns with push pins, you could check mark needle view and move your machine along the seams just like we are here in Mach 3. So I'm going to go ahead and run through that again since we got cut on the video. So I'm going to put this back to what the machine looks like, and we're going to run another AutoFit. So I'm going to bring my next pattern in, which is also an AutoFit pattern. I'm going to have sew head selected over here. I'm going to hit begin AutoFit, and my pattern disappeared. I'm going to go over to the quilt, and this particular pattern is going to go on my pink blocks. And I'm going to start. Now normally I would do custom quilting with a different foot, but this is going to work out just fine for today's video. I'm going to place my needle right where I want that pattern to start, and I'm going to press the green button. That's my function button. If you look at the screen, a green dot popped up. That's the start of my AutoFit. I'm going to move to where I would want that pattern to end and press the green button again. On my screen, that pattern popped up the exact size that I wanted it to. I have maintain ratio selected, so it's automatically sizing the pattern to the space I put it in. I'm going to continue down this row and just tap my green button when I get to that point where I want that pattern to end every time. This is a fairly wonky quilt, which is why I'm choosing to do AutoFit in case my blocks are a little off. The Mach 3 is going to help me account for that. So I went a little further with this one. And now to show you my tip for double checking placement, I'm going to hit accept. And if I were to check these right now without needle view, what I would have to do is move the sew head to that other point, come back to the computer, zoom in, make sure my pattern's not going to touch, and you're going to be walking back and forth. And you can imagine by the time I get to these blocks, that's a long way to see. So you want to be able to zoom in and not have to walk back and forth. So to help myself out, we're going to go to view, check mark, needle view, and now the screen is going to follow wherever I place my needle. So I'm going to zoom in so I can see it from a distance. And I'm not worried about seeing the whole pattern because I'm going to trace my block with the needle. So now that it's zoomed in, I'm going to turn the computer towards me over here, and I'm going to follow my seam and glance at the screen. And that's where my point's going to cross. That's exactly where it is on the screen. So now from a distance, halfway across the frame, I can see that my needle and my stitching is not going to cross into a space I don't want it to. So that's my cross point for the blocks, and I can see that on the screen the stitching is exactly where I wanted it. Now I can go up to where I don't want the stitching to cross and glance at the screen again and see that it's following me wherever I go and see that that pattern is placed well. So this function doesn't only work with AutoFit. I was only showing AutoFit so that you had something to see, but using needle view will definitely help you with custom quilting, making sure that your stitching is not going in a space you don't want it to. So I'm Ashley with Accomplished Quilting. We make quilting easy, If you have ideas for more videos you'd like to see, please drop them below. Thank you.